In this Photoshop tooltip, I want to talk to you about the gradient tool. The gradient tool happens to be hiding over here underneath your paint bucket tool. And I'm going to just open up a new document that is just a basic, like any document here. So let's just do an 8.5 by 11, click create. So now we have a blank white space to work on. If I use the paint bucket tool, and let me switch foreground and background here, and I want to fill a space with a paint bucket, all I have to do is click and it changes the space. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. I'm going to create another layer on which I'm going to create my gradient. And the way I get the gradient tool is I click and hold and then choose the gradient tool. And then I'll get a crosshair. Now the crosshair is really important, and I can see a preview of my gradient up here, by the way, because how you drag is going to make the gradient on your page. So if I start and go straight in the middle and go straight to the bottom, you'll see that it's a basic gradient like so. Okay, I'm going to undo that. If I want more black than purple, I'm going to stop a little sooner. So if I go to here, I will have more black on the bottom and just a little bit of purple on the top. On the other hand, if I scroll way past the edge, and I could even keep on going, I'll have less black on the bottom and more purple on the top. Now this is pulling from the foreground to background colors, if you're wondering where that is coming from. And I can also undo that, and I can pull at a diagonal to get a gradient. So I can go from one corner all of the way to the other corner, and now my gradient is in a diagonal. I can do it backwards, so I can go from the bottom to the top, and it'll change it so that the purple is on the bottom and the black is on the top. I think you get the point by now. It's a really cool tool to be able to create a background with. And again, it's using the foreground and background colors. If I change this background color, let's change it to something that is kind of a blue-green color, like so, then it will be that type of a gradient. And you saw there, I pulled a very short line, and this is the way that that gradient looks. It's a lot of fun to play with. Okay, so that's a use for it for backgrounds, but there's also some other uses for gradients, particularly when it comes to using masking, and I'll be right back to explain that. When creating composite images, or if you just want to create a cool artistic effect, gradients are a really fun way to experiment with masks. So I have an image here, and we're just going to play with this with the gradient tool for a moment so I can show you what I mean by that. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and name my background, and I'm going to create a mask. And when I create the mask, of course, my foreground and background color turn to black and white. Now, when I come to my gradient tool, I can choose to do the same thing I just did on that blank piece of paper, but now I'm going to be using the gradient to paint what shows and what gets hidden in this particular image. So if I go from left to right, you'll see that that makes this transparent. Let me undo that. I could also do it from up here in the corner. I could do it all of the way across the image like so. I could come up from the bottom if I wanted to. I could come way up here and hide most of the image. I could go the opposite direction and go down. So it makes for something really interesting, especially if you have another layer underneath this one that you're hiding or revealing. So in this particular case, let's go ahead. We're going to grab our paint bucket tool, which is that gradient tool's cousin. And we're going to put a black layer underneath our current layer. Then we're going to come back to our gradient tool, go back to our layer mask, and then we are going to hide and reveal. So this is an example of that. What I did was just revealed the darkness underneath the current image. Okay, so that's one other piece of how you can use the gradient tool in an image situation where you want to do something a little bit artistic. Now, when you get into looking at the gradient tool as being a little bit advanced, we've only worked with the linear gradient. There are all kinds of gradients up here. So you can choose this little starburst gradient, and same kind of concept. I'm going to draw it here and look at that. It made a cool dark cloud. I could go the other direction and hide something over here. Okay, here is a radial gradient. That one's kind of a star shape. This one is a circle. So I could go out. Let's do that the opposite way. Still going to work the same way. Let's turn this around and do it that way. So now it's made like a vignette. So I have another type of an artistic, kind of fun way to use a gradient on a layer mask. All I had to do was flip that foreground background color to get the effect that I wanted to get. So I hope this has got some creative juices going for you, and you'll get in here in Photoshop, just get a document or a photo open and play around with the gradient tool. Get to know it a little bit better and get to know what its artistic capabilities can be for you.